Welcome to Come and See, your podcast for finding truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by Living Waters Abide Ministries. With host and founder, Richard Case, and co-host and retreat leader, Kathy Ricconi. Today is our special guest day, where we will hear from a friend in the ministry who will share their insight and stories on truth in this chaotic world. And now your host, Richard Case.
Well, good morning, everybody. This is Guest Thursday, and we're very excited to have two guests that we know, as well as we know their parents, because they're involved with Living Waters Ministry with the Hawkins and the Cardies, and they happen to know each other. And we have Conrad, Cardie, and Ben Hawkins, who are friends, and they had a really amazing experience by going to Mount Everest, which we're going to get into, and just have them share what it meant to experience the work of God. So first of all, welcome you guys. Thank you. And we'd love to hear just a little bit about you, and then we'll get into the story. And Conrad, why don't you go first? And first of all, just tell us, where do you live, marriage, work, what kind of things are you up to, just right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Happy to be here and kind of share what happened there. So a little about me. I'm 24, married, live in Denver, Colorado, to my wife, high school sweetheart. For work, I work in investor relations for an Israeli venture capital fund.
Oh, cool.
And yeah.
So are they gonna have you go over and go to Israel?
I may go over on a trip eventually, but probably not until later this year, hopefully in the fall.
Yeah. Oh, great. When you go, let us know. We know we have good connections over there. Ben, how about you? Just tell us a little bit about you, and same thing.
Yeah, I just recently turned 25 a couple days ago. I am engaged. I'm getting married early this summer, and right now.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And right now I'm working in lead generation for a couple companies.
Okay, great. That's great. How long have you guys been dating?
About 2 years.
Nice. That's great. Does she live in Denver too already, or?
No, she's living in Phoenix right now, so she's moving out here in a month or two.
So she must have great wisdom, because that's a better place to live is here. Well, before we get into the story, I think it'd be helpful for our audience to just hear your spiritual background a little bit. So, Conrad, why don't you go ahead and start? How did you, in your life, come to know Christ and learn how to walk with Him?
Yeah. So I was born to two great parents, good believers, grew up going to a Christian private school, church as well, summer camps, so really just kind of got poured into my entire life throughout that. And then my junior year in high school, I chose to go to military school, which was a kind of a big change after leaving private school and family and everything like that. And that was kind of where I made my faith my own. I didn't have really any support out there or anything like that. So that was kind of my deciding point where it became mine. And then it's been a journey since then.
Yeah, that's neat. Where was that school?
It was out in Virginia. It was called Fork Union.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. It's interesting. So you just went out there, junior, senior?
Junior year, not my senior year. It was just, I couldn't do more than one. One was 24. So.
But that was good.
Did you come back to the same high school you were
I
originally
did, back
at?
to the same high school, and then I met my wife because she came in my junior year that I was gone. So
okay.
It worked out.
So it's good you came back.
I know it was.
That's great. Oh, Ben, how about you? How did you come to know Christ in your life?
Yeah, it's pretty similar to Conrad's. I grew up with two amazing parents. I went to a private school. I was actually homeschooled for a number of years. And then by the time I got to college, I really hadn't made it my own. And then I actually went on a study abroad and got stuck at sea. And then by the time I got back, I realized that making it my own was now the only thing I wanted to do. So
yeah. That's neat. What college you go to?
I went to Grand Canyon University.
Okay, not in Phoenix, right?
Yeah.
Is that where you met your fiance?
It is. Well, we met through friends there, but not at school. So.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, that's great.
And how do you two know each other? I mean, I know your parents are friends, but did you go to school together? Have you been friends forever? What's the scoop there?
Benj?
Yeah, I mean, we've always kind of known of each other. We were, wouldn't say like good friends in school, but we hung out on occasion. It really wasn't until this Everest trip that we became good friends.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's kind of neat.
But you did go to school together then for a
Yeah.
season? Okay.
So, yeah, we're looking forward to hearing about this Everett story. So, first of all, tell us how did this even come about that this trip became available to you? How did you decide to go do that together? What were all the situations that just said, yeah, we're going to actually go do that? And then we want to move into the next question, which would be, how did you prepare? How are you preparing here, to go on that trip? So two questions you guys can start processing if you would.
Yeah, I'll kind of take that first one there. So how it kind of came about is our family, um, whenever missionaries are coming into town, they like to take them out on lunch, dinner, kind of hang out with them a little bit. And there was a missionary from Nepal who was in town, I think for like the weekend, and my family had hung out with him that day. And that night they invited my, at the time, I think fiance and I to go to dinner with them at this Nepal restaurant. So I said yes. And then his name was Amar, the missionary. And at dinner, he was talking about some of the hikes he's done in Nepal, the
Hmm.
people he's been with, and just kind of his experiences over there. And it sounded incredible. And he was like, if you ever want to come out to Nepal, I'll happily take you up to base camp. And I was like, are you sure? Like you will?
Is this a
I know.
legitimate
I was like,
offer?
are you actually offering or just being kind here? He's like, no, yeah, I'll take you up. I was like, all right, well then next summer we'll go.
That's
Um,
awesome.
so I reached out to one of my other buddies. Benj knows him. His name is Sam. Like a week later, I was like, hey, do you have any desire to go to Nepal to hike to base camp? He's like, yeah, absolutely. He's like, but we should have three people. And I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. I have no clue who to invite for that. And then at that point, Benj and I hadn't really hung out too much. We had gotten a few beers, I think, over the past 2 years. And then I reached out to Ben again. I was like, hey, want to get together for a drink? And then I saw him. I was like, hey, do you have any desire to go to Nepal? We'd love to have you there.
Okay. So Ben, how
That's
about
awesome.
how about from your perspective? How did you decide to join that?
Yeah, it's pretty spur of the moment. I was hanging out with Conrad and he brought up the trip and he said, we'd love to have you. And I kind of right then and there decided that it was something I wanted to do and I was going to do it.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, are you both by nature like adventure junkies, love to do this sort of thing? Is that
Yes,
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, I can imagine. Okay, so you had a year. What did they have you do to prepare to just even go on the trip?
I mean, they didn't really have us do anything in particular. I started working out every day and trying to get my basically just in shape to be able to handle it. I always knew altitude was going to be a big problem.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to be in as good shape as I could be at that time.
Yeah. Okay. So basically,
Was there a training program that you guys put yourselves through, or you just
No, it was,
you're young and you can just
I think
that's
that
not
was
the
our hope
approach
that
Rich and I
we'd
would
just be
take.
fine.
yeah, it would be fine. Yeah. What?
That's
Hey,
awesome.
we're going to go to Nepal. Okay, great. All right. So now you go. Start telling what happened. As you now are over there. I'm imagining that's a pretty lengthy flight just to even get there, right?
Yeah, so our flights actually got changed a couple months out over there, so they got delayed and then pushed back like an entire day for one of them.
Oh
So
wow.
I think flying out there, each of us had 3 to 5 flights just because we were all flying from different parts of the country.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so that was a journey in itself, just traveling out there. And then yeah, once we got there, it was early morning after flying for probably 40, 50 hours.
Wow.
So and then we just hit the ground running. Our church had requested that we go visit a church out there that they support. So they gave Benja GoPro and gave us the location of a church and asked us to go meet with the pastor and go film and kind of introduce ourselves out there.
Yeah. So you went and visited this pastor, and And then when did you then start your trek?
So then that next morning we actually so we fly from Kathmandu into Lukla, which is also known as the world's deadliest airport. So if you ever look up pictures, actually, it's on a hillside with a pretty significant slope that you actually land on. So
That must have been interesting, huh?
yeah, that was for sure interesting. So then we landed and then we basically just started right from there.
Okay. And when you say start, what is that where you start after you land? You actually start your hike?
Yeah.
Okay. And
Okay, so this is a totally ignorant question. I know you've already said you were going to the base camp. Is this the plan is you were going to hike to the top of Mount Everest to a certain point in it? What exactly does that mean? Or what were your plans?
So essentially our entire plan was just to get to base camp, which is
So where is that?
that's right at the base of Everest, but it's
Okay.
above 17,000 feet in elevation.
Wow. Okay. So
So-
even that is quite the adventure in and of itself, right?
Yeah, and it
Okay.
even takes people 2 weeks to hike it. So it's
Wow.
a journey.
Okay.
and
We did,
you start from that city you landed in.
yeah.
And are there a pass? Are you with what they call Sherpas and people are walking you up there? Do you have to carry anything or are you just walking with them?
I mainly just walked. Sam and Conrad both carried one of their bags, but our heavy bags got carried for us, which made it possible.
Okay. And what's the path like? What's it like even walking in that specific area? Just narrow, wide, steep?
To start off, it's actually not too bad. It's mainly a cobblestone path for the first day that you're hiking. You walk through a bunch of small villages along the way. A lot of people living near more the base where Lukla is as like the main town, and then it gets more sparse as you go up.
Okay.
So what was your basic itinerary then? Were how many days was it planned for you to be able to get to base camp? And then do you stop, like when you're passing through these villages, are you stopping and talking to people along the way? Your nose to the ground and you're just going? What's that look like for those of us who are unfamiliar? And how does it compare to hiking in Colorado, aside from altitude?
Yeah, so kind of for that, I forget exactly how many days we had initially planned. I knew we had a little flexibility just because of our trip. But yeah, you'd wake up fairly early in the day, usually around 6 a.m., and just start hiking. We'd always stop for lunch or a tea somewhere kind of around 11 or noon, and then usually get to our destination not too much longer after that, between probably like 3 to 5, and then like an acclimation hike after that. So going up an additional 500 feet, spending some time up there and then coming back down.
And that's to help your lungs be able to handle the next day's climb, correct?
And to be able to sleep that night so you're not at like a brutal elevation for your body.
Okay.
That's so cool.
So how many days did it take you to get there to base camp?
I think it took us 7 days to get up, and then we actually came back in 2 days.
Okay. So 7 days, you get up to base camp. Just describe that. What's that like? Because we all hear, people wind up at base camp, and we don't even know what that really means. What was that like?
Right.
Describe base camp. What does that feel like? What's going on there? Are you intense? What's going on?
Yeah, so when we got to base camp, it was towards the end of the hiking season, so it was more as people were coming down from summiting Everest. So we were seeing people carrying ladders off the glacier field. Lots of the tents were actually gone by that point from people just headed back down, but it's an impressive place. Some of the best views you could probably ever have. It was a special moment for us. So.
And is it like hundreds of yards wide and big, or is it smaller, or what's the what's the feel of it?
Yeah, I mean it was pretty big. It was probably like a mile by a half mile. So a decent size there, and it's just kind of jagged because it's snow, ice, and boulders everywhere. So a bunch of ladders, a lot of plywood, and just kind of things covering up to have flat surfaces for tents.
Yeah.
Then surrounding you are massive mountains.
When
So
you,
did the Sherpas? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rich.
I was just going to say, did you then have to have spiked shoes to even? Were you walking on ice to even get up there to that point, or is it all? Is it all kind of?
Yeah, that was still rock, snow, dirt, so we were fine.
Okay.
And so do the Sherpas, do they basically what is their role? Do they prep you for everything as far as the camping and that sort of thing too? They're carrying your gear and helping you set up camp, or that's on you? How does that play out? What's a Sherpa's role really in all of it?
Yeah, I mean they pretty much just carried our bags, which had all of our clothes, some snacks in there.
Mm-hmm.
We had two, so they were extremely helpful. Carried, I mean, there's no way we could have made it up with carrying the bags that they did, and they were probably 90 pounds to 100 pounds. They were some very small people. Yeah, but what they did was incredible. And then at night we would just find like a hostel or like a little building, and then
Oh, okay.
end up sleeping in there.
Yeah.
All right. So you weren't tent camping along the way.
No,
There
we
are
were not.
stations that you're stopping at that are somewhat prepped for you to be there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, so you got there. What was the at the time? What was the weather like when you get up there? Because you're talking near the end, so there's was it already starting to get a little bit tricky, or was it pretty sunny and nice and all that?
For us, we actually were very blessed in the fact that we had a perfect day at base camp. It was perfectly clear. We saw Everest. We could pretty much see any mountain we wanted to from there, which does not usually happen. And actually, as we left was when the weather started rolling in. So we missed all of the bad weather. So,
Did you get good pictures of Everest?
yeah.
I bet.
We did.
How tall is Everest total? When because you're at 17,000. How much further would it be to get to the top?
I think it's at like 29,000 feet.
Wow.
That must be something.
I'm assuming you carry oxygen, even just for getting to base camp, just in case you need, like in Colorado, you can buy those little shots of a little something to help with the altitude or not.
That definitely would have helped. We did not. So we definitely started feeling the lack of oxygen at base camp. And that was not an enjoyable time.
Yeah. Did you wind up talking to anybody that had scaled Everest and was now on their way back?
No, at that point, I mean, we could see people further away that were probably coming down, maybe from a second or third camp. But where we were, like at our section in base camp, the only people who were there were people who had only planned to go to base camp, kind of like us for that day.
Okay. So it's just an accomplishment, pretty much just, hey, we made it to base camp of Everest. We didn't have to worry about going to the summit. We made it. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, so you're there. Tell us now what happened as you experienced, that place and the work of God there. Tell us the story of what all that happened there.
Yeah. So really, for me, the biggest thing was just seeing the sheer size of the mountains. Because even with being at 17,000 feet, when you're seeing mountains that are, 12, 13,000 feet taller than you, it is shocking.
That's humbling, right?
Yeah. Well, there's even times where looking up at a cloud, we think we see the top of it, and our guide Amar would say, "Oh no, it goes taller," and you'd see the clouds move a little bit, and sure enough, the rocks were going. Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, and I think kind of same for me there. I know I had injured myself a little prior that year, got surgery. So I had also never been above 13,000 feet. I've never actually made it up a container. So to get to base camp, to go that high, that was incredible. Just and then the views, the people there, it was amazing.
Yeah, yeah, great. So what, again, as you were experiencing that, what happened there in terms of what you saw God do, and what was happening to you that you were needing some of the God's help with what happened? Explain, what happened and how did you approach that?
Yeah. So, I mean, going into the trip, I knew I was going to have surgery earlier that year. I had torn my labrum, hurt
Mm.
myself, hadn't been able to work out for 8, 9 months. And then I had also got altitude sickness twice trying to go up 14ers in Colorado.
Mm.
So I think originally planning the trip, I felt a little foolish just because I'd never been above 13,000 and I was planning to go to 17, 18,000. So really praying going into that trip. And I think every day, every night, um, right before 13,000, I was praying for health to
Mm.
be able to get to the next day and continue one more. And just to make it to base camp was, I mean, it was beautiful, a blessing. I couldn't have done that on my own.
Yeah.
Mm. Were you feeling the fatigue along the way as you got higher and higher? Was it noticeable to you?
Yeah, it was definitely noticeable. And the last night we slept above 17,000, so it was probably 17,100 feet. And I don't think any of us slept more than probably 2 or 3 hours because your heart rate's 140, 150 all night, and
Wow.
you don't sleep well at that. So
Wow. And so what caused you to wind up having some trouble over there?
in terms of like altitude or
Yeah, just in terms of because you said you had some experiences there of needing to pray and God doing some things for you. Was it on your way back, or what occurred there that?
yeah, I think it was just fear initially of not being able to go above 13,000.
Mm.
So just praying, and whenever I get tired, which was quite often while hiking up, we do a little hill. I'd be out of breath, and I'd get a little nervous, thinking maybe I can't make it much further, or I'll get altitude sickness or a light head. It was great for the entire way up.
So is there, like, even in that, I think that's got to be such a trust building experience between you and the Father, between you and God, as you are saying, okay, I recognize my own weakness in this, and I know I'm not making it to this next this next point that I've got to get to without you. And so is there anything you would say as you were in that journey with God that you would say, this is something he really showed me of himself, grew my faith in his character in this, or any just like, spiritual growth that you saw in the midst of the difficulty, right?
I would say definitely spiritual growth through that there. Um, and also just putting trust in him. Like I think everything had been planned up until that point, what we wanted to do, where we were going, and I didn't know if I was going to make it past day 4 or 5, which was when we would cross that 13,000 foot mark. So just trusting that I was going to go on there, believing and praying that I'd be able to
Mm-hmm.
make it past that and continue up to base camp.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Ben, anything for you in terms of how you experienced it all? And
Yeah, so going into the trip, my main focus was I wanted to learn how to trust God as things got hard and just continually just seek Him through that. So around day 4 or 5, hiking just got difficult. You'd start off, and within 10 seconds, all your muscles are sore, and you're
Yeah. About what altitude are you at that point?
that was about like 14,000
Okay.
feet.
Okay.
So you're breathing heavy, right, 10 seconds in, and that just continues for, 6 or 7 hours that you're hiking that day. And so I learned pretty quickly that, every 100 or 200 feet, I'd say, Lord, I'm exhausted.
Mm.
Please just help me keep going. If this is as bad as it gets, that's great. Just keep me moving. And I stayed right there for days. So
yeah.
Hmm.
So you had that experience in prayer every day going up, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I love even just hearing him describe that. I can't help but think of the beauty of God teaching you dependence on him. When you said, literally every 100 feet or so, I have to stop and pray. And we talk about abiding all the time and how it's a 24/7 thing, and really walking with God moment by moment, step by step. And I love that he has given you guys, especially at this age, this opportunity to live that out, to walk that out in a very physical representation of what he wants to do in your spiritual lives, right? Just step by step, knowing I am fully dependent on him. And 100 feet more, and I'm back on my knees and I'm praying, and I need your strength. And this is what it looks like to really learn and step into dependence on the Father, and then watch, even as he brings you to this glorious place, but the journey itself was glory, right?
Yeah. Particularly when you got to do that day after day, step after
right.
step.
And knowing, it's hard.
Not knowing,
and you're tired.
Am I going to make it? Yeah, that's great. Well, listen, thanks for sharing that.
We're
going to come back next week and have you talk a little bit more about what you did learn spiritually about this process. And thanks for setting it all up with, the courage to go, to someplace like that. It's 17,000 feet. Here in Colorado, Kathy, we have what's called 14ers, and people try to hike 14,000 feet.
Right.
And it's hard.
Yes.
And going, and I'm sure you experienced this, Conrad, going another 3,000 or 4,000 feet is a big difference. Because I imagine the oxygen is way different, and just the pressure of it all is different. So it's amazing. So anyway, we'd love to have you back. Thank you so much for sharing. Father, we're just so grateful for Conrad and Ben's experience and what they began to learn about walking with you by having to walk this path. And so we just pray that we'll understand even further what they did learn and how it can apply to us. And so we thank you for their bearing witness to this wonderful thing. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Well, thank you so much for joining us, guys. And thank you for joining us to the listeners. Be sure to tune in next Thursday as well, as we continue to hear more from their story of their trek to Everest. If you have questions, send them in to us at questions@abideministries.com, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Yep, we'll see you then.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Come and See, your podcast for truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by Living Waters Abide Ministries. Send us your questions and comments, and tune in tomorrow for more answers to your personal questions about living life in God's truth. Remember, God's will is best and none better. His truth brings peace in this world of chaos.